today's session, we will discuss about the female reproductive system, which comes in chapter 3, human reproduction chapter, right? Female reproductive system, what are the parts of the female reproductive system? If you think, what is a female gonad? The female gonad is called ovaries. Now, from the ovaries, tubes will come. What are the tubes called? Oviducts. The ovary will release ova, and that ova passes through the oviducts and it reaches the womb, which is called uterus. That's the third part. Ovary is the main part. From there, through the ovarian tube, or we can call it the fallopian tube, ova will be released, that will be collected in the uterus. And in the uterus, if it gets fertilized, it gets nourished, then it comes out through the cervix. The mouth of the uterus is called cervix. Then cervix leads to vagina and external genitalia. All these are the parts of the female reproductive system. And male reproductive system is extra-abdominal, but female reproductive system is intra-abdominal. And male and female reproductive system both are located in the pelvic region only. So we have to tell where is female reproductive system located, means location located in pelvic region. They are located in the pelvic region. So now female reproductive system constitutes of a pair of ovaries which are called as primary sex organs. It constitutes of a pair of ovaries. What are these ovaries called? They are called primary sex organs. We will talk about each and everything. So this is a pair of ovary. So a pair of ovaries will be there, and then fallopian tubes I told, right? This is a fallopian tube. A pair of fallopian tubes also, it contains a pair of ovary, then fallopian tube is the next part, right? Then it leads to the uterus. Uterus is the third part. Then the opening of the uterus is called cervix. Cervix is the next part. Cervix leads to a muscular tube-like structure, so which is a copulatory organ called vagina. So vagina is the next part, and female external genitalia will be there. Clitoris, labia majora, labia minora. So we'll see it in the next picture, in the next session. So all those things together are called as external genitalia. So cervix, vagina, and what are all those together called as? External genitalia. Right? So all these are parts of female reproductive system. Come on, tell me, what are the parts of the female reproductive system? The female gonad is called as ovary, a pair of ovaries on either sides of the lower abdomen, intra-abdominal only. Now from here the eggs will be released. The eggs will be passed into these tubes. So this tube is called fallopian tube, or you can call it as oviduct also. The ovaries will release ova. That ova goes into the fallopian tube, and here itself it will meet the sperm. Fertilization happens here, and the fertilized egg or the zygote, the developing zygote, goes in the form of blastocyst stage. It goes into the uterus. This is the uterus. The third part is uterus. The uterus is an inverted pear-shaped structure. The mouth of the uterus is called cervix. This is the mouth of the uterus. This is cervix. Cervix leads to cervical canal. The cervical canal opens into a muscular tube-like structure called vagina. And here in the vagina, external genitalia like clitoris, labia majora, labia minora, all those things will be there. All together is called external genitalia. All these are the parts of the female reproductive system. Now all these parts along with the mammary glands, right? Mammary glands are also important. All these parts along with the mammary glands, they are integrated. They work together for the child development. They are integrated. Structurally also they are integrated. Functionally also they are integrated to support the process of ovulation. After ovulation it leads to fertilization. Fertilization confirms pregnancy. Then after pregnancy, when the gestation period gets completed, birth, then mammary glands help in child care. So we tell that all these parts along with the mammary glands, they are integrated. They are integrated structurally and functionally. They are integrated structurally and functionally, right? So they work together structurally also, functionally also. They are integrated to support the process of, what process are they supporting? To support the processes of, so first it helps in ovulation. Release of the egg is called ovulation. What is ovulation? Formation of egg, right? Releasing the egg is called ovulation. After ovulation, fertilization will happen. So it supports fertilization also. Now, fertilization, it leads to pregnancy, right? Then after the gestation period, birth. Then next, child care. So all these parts along with the mammary glands, they are working structurally and functionally to support the process of ovulation, fertilization, pregnancy, birth and child care. So this is an introduction to the female reproductive system. Now we have to look about each and every organ in detail. So we have seen the picture also, and I am telling female reproductive system comprises of female gonads called ovaries. Where are the ovaries located? In the lower abdominal region. They are almond shaped structures, right? Then these are connected to the pelvic wall also. They are connected to the uterus also by ovarian ligaments. Then from here ova will be discharged. So these finger like projections will help the egg to be move inside, and the parts of the fallopian tube are called as, this funnel like structure is called as infundibulum. Then this curved portion is called as ampulla. The narrow portion is called isthmus. It leads to the uterus. Uterus is a tissue which bears the baby also, which nourishes the baby also. After the fully developed fetus, then the cervix opens and the baby comes out through the vagina, right? So these are the parts. This along with the mammary glands will support, how many processes it will support? Ovulation also it will support, fertilization also it will support, pregnancy, birth and child care also it will support. Quickly take a screenshot, then we will talk about the female gonad ovaries. Yes. Now let's talk about the first part, the female gonad, that is ovaries. We can see here in the picture, so they are grayish, reddish, almond shaped solid structures, right? We'll talk about ovaries, right? So where are they located? They are located in the lower abdomen, one on each side. They are located in the lower abdomen, one on each side. So now come on, tell me, what are they acting as? They are acting as primary sex organs. So they are primary sex organs. And we have discussed what should a primary sex organ do. It has to make the gametes, female gametes it has to produce. The female gamete is called egg, and it has to produce the female hormones. The female hormones are called ovarian hormones. It has to produce ovarian hormones, and it has to produce the female gamete which is called as egg, or it has to produce ova. So it is the place where egg is produced. It is the place where estrogen is synthesized. So that is why it is called as a primary sex organ, right? Now what is the shape? Almond shape. Is it solid or hollow? It is solid. What is the color? Grayish, reddish or pinkish color. Where are they located? One on each side of the abdomen, right? So what is the shape? We are telling they are almond shaped structures. Are they solid or hollow? They are solid. What is the color? Grayish pink in color. They are grayish and pink in color, right? And what is the length? And what is the width? For testis also I told numericals you have to remember. So the length of the ovary is 2 to 4 centimeters. The width is 1.5 centimeters. So what is the length? The length is 2 to 4 centimeters and the width will be 1.5 centimeters. Okay. And the ovaries are attached to the pelvic wall also. They are attached to the uterus also by uterine ligaments. So here is the ovary. Ovary is attached to the uterine wall by what? I am telling these are called as uterine ligaments. If you want, we can write these are called ovarian ligaments. It's attached to the ovarian wall, or they are kept in their position with the help of ovarian ligaments. Ovaries are kept in position. They are kept in position by, what did I tell? Ovarian ligaments. With the help of ovarian ligaments, it gets attached to the pelvic wall also. It gets attached to the uterus also. Now, when we have to see the structure of an ovary, each ovary is lined by germinal epithelium. Seminiferous tubule is also lined by germinal epithelium. In male, seminiferous tubule is also lined by thin germinal epithelium. The germinal epithelium contains cuboidal spermatogonia and pyramid-shaped Sertoli cells. In the same manner, each ovary is also covered by thin germinal epithelium. Each ovary, it is covered by thin germinal epithelium. Is covered by, it is wrapped by, what is that called? Thin germinal epithelium. This thin germinal epithelium, if you have to see the structure of one ovary, this outer layer is called as germinal epithelium, which encloses the ovarian stroma. What is this entire portion called? This is germinal epithelium. And what is the entire portion called? It is called ovarian stroma. It is enclosing, is covered by thin germinal epithelium, which encloses, ovarian stroma. Now, this ovarian stroma is divided into two parts. The outer glandular portion of the ovarian stroma is called as cortex, and the inner, less granular, less dense region, which is richly supplied with blood vessels, is called as medulla. The ovarian stroma, this portion is divided into, the peripheral portion is called cortex, the inner portion is called medulla. So, peripheral cortex. Then next, inner medulla. Medulla is less dense. And if you see the peripheral cortex portion, it is glandular. And it is packed with ovarian follicles. Primary follicle, secondary follicle. Right? So, the cortex region is rich with follicles. So, this is the cortex region. So, we need to draw a follicle. This is a primary follicle. Then primary follicle will grow and it will become a secondary follicle. It will further grow. It will become a tertiary follicle. So, like that. Then, and fluid-filled anthem will be formed and it becomes a matured Graafian follicle. Now, this matured Graafian follicle will rupture. The matured Graafian follicle will rupture and it releases the egg. This process is called ovulation. Now, this region which I drawed, the thick, dense, glandular region, is called cortex. And in this, what are these called? Ovarian follicles. And this region is called cortex. Whereas, if you see the inner region is called as medulla and it will be richly supplied with blood vessels. So, this medulla region is richly supplied with blood vessels, right? Only blood vessels portion will be there, but it's not having any dense materials. So, we tell it is less dense region and this is called as medulla. So, this medulla is less dense and is richly supplied with blood vessels, right? So, it is richly supplied with blood vessels. So, understood till here about ovary. Ovary, what is it? It is a primary sex organ. Why is it called primary sex organ? Because it produces the sex hormone, estrogen, steroidal hormones it produces, and it also produces the female gamete which is called as egg. Now, this ovary, what is the shape? Almond shaped. What is the color? It is grayish and pinkish color. Now, it's solid or hollow? It is solid. Where is it? In the lower abdomen. What is the length? 2 to 4 centimeters in length. What is the width? 1.5 centimeters in width. What is it wrapped by? It is wrapped by thin epithelium, germinal epithelium. What it is enclosing? Ovarian stroma. Ovarian stroma is divided into two portions. Outer portion, cortex. Inner portion, medulla. In the cortex portion, you can see, you are seeing the growing follicles. In the inner portion, blood vessels will be there and it will be less dense. So this is about ovary. Take a screenshot. Then we will talk about the fallopian tube. Yes. Now let us talk about the next portion. What is that called? Fallopian tubes. In anatomy chapter, structural organization in animals, there we studied, in that chapter we studied fallopian tubes are made by ciliated columnar epithelial cells. Do you remember? Now let us talk about the second portion, which is called as fallopian tubule. Fallopian tubule, since it is conducting egg, it is also called as oviduct. Since it is conducting ova, it is also called oviduct. It has another name. It is also called uterine tube. Since it is leading to the uterus, it has another name which is also called uterine tube. So, what is the length of the fallopian tubule? It is a long, non-coiled 10 to 12 centimeters tube which carries the ova from the ovary into the uterus. So, how long it is? 10 to 12 centimeters long, uncoiled tubular structure. What is it? It is uncoiled tubular structure which carries, what it is carrying? It carries ova from the gonad called ovary to the uterus. Now, this fallopian tube is made up of, just now I told, it is made up of columnar epithelium, right? So, fallopian tubes are made of, they are made of simple columnar ciliated epithelium. If you remember, we studied it in structural organization animal chapter. Bronchi and the fallopian tubes, the hollow organs are lined by columnar ciliated epithelial cells which help in the movement of the gametes, right? So now this fallopian tube has three parts. The first portion is called infundibulum. The second portion is called ampulla and the third portion is called isthmus. So what are the three portions of this fallopian tube? It is divided into three parts. The first portion, which is near the ovary, which is funnel shaped structure. You can see it is a funnel shaped structure. What is it called? We wrote there, it is called infundibulum. It is called infundibulum. Now this funnel shaped infundibulum, it has finger like projections. The funnel shaped structure, peripheral, it is having finger like projections. The finger like projections we have drawn here. The finger like projections are called fimbriae. The ciliary movements of this fimbriae will help to gather the egg from the ovary, and in the funnel there will be a central hole. Here is a central hole which is called ostia. Through that ostia, the ova will go into the fallopian tube. So the first portion of the fallopian tube, it is funnel like, it is called as infundibulum. The infundibulum has finger like projections. The infundibulum has finger like projections. The finger like projections, what are they called? Fimbriae. So what will fimbriae help in? The ciliary movements of the fimbriae will help in collecting the ova from the egg. They help in collecting the ova from ovaries. Now what is the next portion? Then the curved portion is called as ampulla. The curved region. What is that curved region of the fallopian tube called? Ampulla. Right? And then a narrow region. This is the narrow region, the distal end which opens into the uterus is called isthmus. Right? The narrow last portion which leads to uterus. What is it called? Isthmus. The narrow portion is called as isthmus. Now, at the region of ampulla and isthmus, at the junction of ampulla isthmus, sperm meets the egg. That's a place where fertilization happens. Now, egg, it travels this way and it reaches ampulla isthmus junction. Sperm, after copulation, it passes this way and it reaches here. So, at the junction of ampulla isthmus junction, fertilization will happen. So, ampulla isthmus junction, if you see, at this point, sperm meets the egg. Sperm meets the egg. Now, it results in what? Fertilization. Where does the fertilization happens then? At the ampulla isthmus junction, fertilization will happen. Understood? Now, after fertilization, you will get a zygote. Diploid zygote. Now, where is the zygote formed? In the ampulla isthmus junction. The zygote is formed in the ampulla isthmus junction. The early embryonic development of the zygote dividing and making 2-cell blastomeres, dividing and making 4-cell blastomere, dividing and making 8-cell blastomeres, right? 16-cell blastomeres. So, morula, blastula, all that, the early embryonic development, the cleavage starts in the fallopian tube itself. What can we write? The early embryonic development. The early embryonic development starts in the fallopian tube itself. Starts in fallopian tube itself. Means this is the cleavage I showed you. The zygote divides and make 2 blastomeres. The 2 blastomeres will become 4. 4 will become 8. 8 will become 16. 8 to 16 cell solid ball is called as morula. Now, where is that happening? In the fallopian tube itself. So, in the previous board, we discussed about the female gonad, which is called as ovary. Now, we discussed about the second part. What is the second part called? It is called fallopian tube. So, a pair of fallopian tubes are there. Since they are carrying eggs, they are also called oviducts. Since they are leading to the uterus, it is also called uterine tube. How much long it is? 10 to 12 centimeters long. Coiled or uncoiled? It is an uncoiled tubular structure. What is the role? It carries the ova from the ovary and it releases into the uterus, right? And it is made up of simple columnar ciliated epithelial cells. How many portions are there? 3 portions are there. The first portion, which is near to the ovary, which is funnel shaped structure, is called as infundibulum. The peripheral region of this funnel shaped structure has finger like projections which move to take the egg inside, are called as fimbriae. It has a hole. Through the hole, the egg is sent inside. That's called ostia. Then the next portion, the curved portion of the fallopian tube, is called ampulla. The third portion, the narrow portion which leads to the uterus, is called isthmus. At the ampulla isthmus junction, from here the sperm travels after copulation, it will be here. From here the egg will travel, it will be here. At the junction, sperm meets the egg, leads to fertilization. Fertilization leads to development of zygote. Then the zygote starts early embryonic development. Where? In the oviduct itself. Take a screenshot. Then we will talk about the third portion, that is uterus. Right. Now let's talk about the third portion. What is that called? It is called uterus. What are the other names of uterus? It is also called hysteria. It is also called metra. Okay. It is also called womb. It is the place where child is nourished. It is the place where child development will happen, isn't it? So male reproductive system and female reproductive system are different. Male reproductive system will just release the male gametes and their role is done. Whereas female reproductive system has to release the gametes also. It has to receive the male gamete also. Fertilization also should happen and the development also should proceed inside only. Now the third portion, now we are going to talk about uterus. It is also called womb. It is also called metra. It is also called hysteria. hysterectomy, removal of uterus. Okay, so these are the other names. And what is the shape of the uterus? Is it like an inverted pear? It's an inverted pear-like structure. And the mouth of the uterus is called cervix. It will be very small if the woman is not pregnant, but it is distensible. It can expand nicely during the growth of the child during pregnancy. So it's a distensible sac-like structure. And what is the length of the uterus? 7.5 centimeters long. What is the width of the uterus under normal conditions? 5 centimeters wide. It can expand 100 times to its length and 100 times to its width for supporting the amniotic fluid and the fetus inside. Understood? So what shall we write now about the uterus? It is an inverted pear-shaped structure. It is inverted pear-shaped structure. The mouth of the uterus is called cervix. The mouth of uterus is called, what is it called? Cervix. And it can expand, right? So we can tell it is distensible sac-like structure. It is distensible sac-like structure. And if you have to talk about the dimensions, what is the length? What is the width? I told the length is 7.5 centimeters and the width will be 5 centimeters. But it can expand. It can expand 100 times when at the time of pregnancy. When can it expand 100 times? At the time of pregnancy. Why? To support embryo development. To support embryo development. Understood? Now, this uterus is kept in its position. So, by the uterus is attached to the pelvic wall with the help of ligaments. So, like ovarian ligaments, uterus is held in position by ligaments which are attached to the pelvic wall. The ligaments will help to keep the uterus in its place by attaching to the pelvic wall, right? Then next, if we talk about the regions of the uterus, the upper portion of the uterus, which is dome-shaped, which receives the fallopian tubes, is called uterine fundus. The next portion of the uterus is called body. The bottom portion is called as cervix. So, how many portions are there? 3 portions are there. What is that? Parts of uterus. So, I am telling there are 3 parts. What's the first part? Dome-shaped structure. Dome-shaped structure. So, what is it called? Uterine fundus. Okay, so fallopian tubes are opening into the uterine fundus. Fallopian tubes are opening here. Correct, Amma? Then the next portion, the main portion of the uterus is called body. It is the main area. And what is the third region? The third region is called as cervix, the mouth. The third region is called as cervix. Cervix is cylindrical. Cervix is cylindrical, and through cervical canal, cervix opens into a muscular structure called vagina. So, through cervical canal, you can see the picture here. This is cervix. Through the cervical canal, it opens into the female copulatory organ called vagina. Cervix, which is cylindrical, through the cervical canal, it opens into muscular copulatory organ called vagina. What is it called? It is called vagina, right? Now, when we see like uterus is made up of how many layers or how many membranes? It is made up of 3 layers. The outermost layer we wrote here, it is perimetrium. The middle layer, thickest part, which is made up of simple muscle, which is made up of simple muscle. What is it called? Smooth muscle. It's called myometrium. And the inner layer is called as endometrium. Uterine wall is made up of 3 layers. Outer one is fibrous perimetrium. The middle one is muscular, smooth muscle layer, which is thick. This is the one which helps in childbirth, which contracts in response to oxytocin, and it helps in child delivery. That is called myometrium. And the inner layer, which is nutritive, which help in implantation, is called endometrium. Take a screenshot, then we will write down. Right. Now, when we talk about the uterine walls, so what are those? The first one is outer, thick, fibrous perimetrium. The function of perimetrium is protection. So, uterine walls, children. What is the outermost layer called? The outer one is fibrous. What is it called? Perimetrium. It is fibrous in nature. What is the function? Helps in protection. What's the function then? Protection. Now the second one, the middle layer. It is the thickest layer. What is it called? Myometrium. Made up of smooth muscles. Function, it contracts, and these uterine contractions only will help in childbirth. The smooth muscles of the uterus will contract in response to oxytocin. The function of this myometrium is to contract during childbirth, children. Contract during childbirth under the response of oxytocin. So, who will come and initiate the contractions? It is a pituitary hormone, posterior pituitary hormone called oxytocin under the response of oxytocin. Now, coming to the third wall, which is the inner wall. What is it called? It is glandular and it is called as endometrium. So, what is that inner layer called? The inner layer is also thick. It is glandular. It is secretory. It is nutritive, which is called as endometrium. The thickness of the endometrium changes in menstrual cycle. In menstrual cycle, menstrual phase is there, proliferative phase is there, secretory phase is there. So, from one phase to another phase, the thickness of the endometrium changes. So, we can tell that the thickness of endometrium, the thickness of the inner wall, it varies during menstrual cycle. We'll talk about this point detail when we are talking about menstrual cycle. Now, what is the function? It provides nourishment for the embryo. Then next function, it helps in implantation, right? So, helps in implantation. What is implantation? Embedding the embryo inside the uterine wall is called as implantation. The embryo implants, or the blastocyst implants in the endometrium only. So, it helps in implantation, it helps in nourishment also, provides food. And it is richly supplied with blood vessels. So, children, these are the 3 layers of the uterus, right? And if you see morphologically how many parts are there, we have seen the upper one is called fundus, the middle one is called body, and the lower one is called cervix. Then when we talk about cervix, what is cervix? It is cylindrical structure. Cervix is cylindrical structure, and the cervix has the largest and the strongest sphincter which helps to bear the weight of the baby. Only when the cervix open, the baby will be delivered out. That means the cervix has to bear the weight of the baby. So that means it should have a strongest and it should have a largest sphincter muscle. The cervix has strongest and largest sphincter muscle, and this sphincter muscle helps to bear the weight of the body baby. It helps to bear the weight of baby. Okay, it helps to bear the weight of the baby. Now the cervix has two openings, internal opening and external opening. So we'll call it as internal OS and external OS. The cervix has two openings, internal OS and external OS. Internal OS will be present here. So which open? Cervix has two openings. So cervix has two openings. So one opening is called internal OS. The other opening is called external OS. Internal OS is this opening, so which communicates with the body. External opening communicates with the vagina. So internal OS, it communicates with the body of the uterus, with the body region, whereas external OS is communicating with the vagina. External opening is communicating with vagina. The cervical canal, cervix leads to cervical canal and the vagina. Cervical canal and the vagina will make the birth canal through which the baby comes out. So what did we discuss in today's session? We talked about the female gonad ovary. Then we talked about the second part, which is called fallopian tube. Then we talked about the uterus, opening of the uterus we discussed. So now we are left with the next portion called vagina, and then comes the external genitalia, and then with the integrated structure which helps in nourishment of the baby after birth is called mammary gland. So these three structures we'll try to cover in the next session. So hope you are enjoying the lectures. So any comments you can post. If you like the lecture, you can give a thumb symbol and then like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.